Okay guys, to start out this tutorial, we're going to start out by drawing this eagle head shape by making a rounded beak come straight down all the way around over the top. It's not really that hard of a design, just take your time with it like always. And then you're going to end up making 3 of those. After you had traced the symbol onto the Avafoam, then you can use an X-Acto knife and carefully cut around the edges. Then it is time to do 2 more of those, and it doesn't really matter which side you face the Avafoam on for the second one, but the third one it would matter because the flat sides need to be both facing outwards. I call the rough side the ugly side. Think about it like the ugly side always needs to be on the inside, so no matter which way you face on the foam, just look at it and think the ugly side on the inside, and that is the way you trace it. So, or you could just put the good side on the inside and it was like the way you face it, like that. If the good side's on the inside, you can just rearrange it and it still works out. Like I had said, this one, there's 3 of them. And on these 2, it doesn't really matter which side you face, so the ugly side can go up, but on this one, the ugly side goes down. Then, when you pick it up, good side, and the ugly side is on the inside. Now it's time to glue them together. After you had glued them together, the next step would be to start to round off the edges. What I mean by that is taking a Dremel and slowly carving at almost like you're going to bevel it, but then rounding it off and making it just look really smooth, and it'll just feel really nice rather than just a block sitting in your hand. After you have rounded it off, the next thing would be to do is take a Sharpie and the best you can draw the eye and the eye socket along with the beak line. As you can see, they're not perfectly symmetrical, but I think they're fine for what I'm going for. So what you're going to do is take a Dremel and then make that smaller than the outline of the eye, but then the inside of the eye, it's almost like a wall. It's going to stick up, and then the inside is going to be caved in, and the same thing with the socket. And this is what I mean by making a wall around the socket and then around the eye itself. Just carve around the eye and then take a Dremel and really carefully make the wall around the eye itself. I'm sorry if that's confusing, but just look at the picture and hopefully you understand. Any questions, ask me in the comments. And then to make the beak line, just take a Dremel or any other tool and then just make the line along that. And then also draw the designs you see here by taking the side of the Dremel and where my thumb is going along it. And then the same method you use to make the beak line, go right beneath the eye and draw the line straight across and make it go all the way around the sides as shown in the picture. Once you are satisfied with the head, it is now time to move on to the handle. So you're going to take more Avafoam that is a little bit bigger, maybe just as big as the handle, the bottom, of the head, and make it a couple inches going downwards, maybe like 6 inches. It all depends on your preference, really. Maybe just about the size of your hand, because it is a handle and all. So just about maybe a little bit bigger than your hand, and you're going to make it in the handle as saw in the pictures. And this is said shape that you need to build for the handle. It's kind of like an hourglass if you want to relate it to something. But again, you will need to make 3 of those and glue them together. You are again going to use the aforementioned method of putting the ugly side on the inside by keeping those 2 together like so, and then the third one flipping over like that and laying that on top. Then good side, and ugly sides in the middle like said before. After you glue it together, there's a very likely chance that it won't look so pretty, but neither did mine after I did some sanding. so it will look uneven like it does a little bit in this picture. So just sand it really carefully with a Dremel, like I reference a lot in this tutorial, and use Dremels because they are very, very helpful in AvaFoam. So very carefully just go around the edges and sand them down, make them even, and it will look 10 times better than what it did when you cut it out. Then, just like the head on the handle, it is now time to do the same method of almost beveling but completely rounding along the edges till it fits comfortably in your hand. There are many methods that I can think of going about to do this. This picture is actually wrong. That line should not be there, but it will be changed. So don't do it yet, just wait till later in the video. But you can take a fine tip pen, and there are what looks to be like vines, like grapevines or thorn bushes almost. I don't really know, but they look to be all over the handle. So I'm going to take a fine tip pen and use a Dremel to go around them and make them pop out. You could just make them go inwards if you really just want a design, but you don't really want to spend the time to slowly carve out along the whole handle, which was very cumbersome, but in the end I thought it looked really good. This process will take time and patience, and you're going to need a couple different Dremel bits, like sanders and the pen looking bits. You're going to go and use all of them to point out and sharpen and just refine all the points, but it is worth it in the end. I do believe so. If you don't believe so, just do the exact opposite. Instead of popping them out, just pop them inwards. It will still look cool either way. Before you glue the handle, before you watch my video to glue the handle, just remember that that's actually wrong. It should be flipped around. Those two lines are actually where my thumb is right now. Those lines should actually be facing the other way, but that is my fault, so don't do the same mistake. They should follow the same exact lines that are carved inside of the head itself. But what you can do, regardless, is where I'm putting my fingers, drill holes and put dial rods in. This might seem a little too advanced, maybe not, maybe it is, I don't know. But that's what I'm doing. It will just give it more support for the head between the handle. After you had glued the handle and the head together, it will most likely not fit perfectly, but you can make it fit perfectly by slowly going at it with a Dremel. Like I had mentioned before, Dremels are very useful in this, and it will make it look so much more refined and nice. To make the handle, get a piece of PVC that is longer than your waist, but this is all pretty much up to you. I made it the head go right about to where my belly button would be, but you can make the head go to where your waist would be, where your middle waist could be. It's all your preference, but just you find your preference and cut off any excess. There might be a better way about going at this, but this is the way I had figured was the best way. So I made 3 squares that are about the width of the handle, and I'm going to glue them together in the, yet again, aforementioned way of bad side on the inside, good side on the outside. Once you had glued those pieces together, make a circle out of them by rounding down the edges and hold it up to the edge of the PVC and draw another circle that's the size of the PVC. And this is where it gets kind of cumbersome because you're going to need to somehow drill or cut out with an X-Acto knife a hole all the way through the piece of AvaFoam. I do understand that this is a very cumbersome process, so if you don't want to use AvaFoam, you actually could just use cardboard or craft foam and either layer it or just use one layer and completely wrap it around the edge of the PVC. If you had decided to go with the AvaFoam piece, you could see that it is not merged with the PVC, so you can take a Dremel and merge it so it looks like it's better and a part of the handle. After it is merged with the PVC, you can make the design that is just an Assassin's Creed symbol, just the logo itself, with a line through it, but not through the symbol itself, just around it, and it goes all the way around the part, and then you do the same thing as the grapevine looking thing, you just carve around those symbols. Depending on the size of your cane, these two lines that you can add for design may differ, but they are some ways from the top of the handle. And like I said, just look at pictures, look at your cane size, and then you can determine where your lines should be. Then what you can do is, I promise this is the last time you're going to have to do this, is draw a line some ways from the end of the pipe, which would be the bottom. And what you can do is, again, take 3 pieces of foam, a good side in the outside, bad side of the inside, the width, everything. Glue them together, and then you can round them off after cutting a hole down the middle of them. I know it's a long way down, so you don't really have to go all the way down, but I went some ways. What I ended up doing was cutting off some of the end of the PVC itself and sanding down just a tad bit of the PVC itself yet again, and fitting it with whatever I had carved, so it rests in kind of nice and easy. Like I'm going to mention, there's most likely a better way to go out this, so this is not your only option. So just keep watching the video and I'll mention it later. Next thing you need to do is round off the edges and make it as much of a cylinder as you can, and almost as close to as round as the PVC, and then merge the top with the PVC as well. To make the scythe that is at the end of the blade, just look at this bottom part, take some craft foam that is obviously bigger than the end point, grab your piece, hold it up against it, it will go a little bit outside of the Ava foam, but won't go to the exact end of the Ava foam on the right. It will just go a little bit over on the left, and it will obviously be thinned out to make it small enough to fit in between the Ava foam. I drew and cut out this simple blade shape out of foam board, and now I'm going to put it inside of the piece of Ava foam. I will be doing that by marking out lines on wherever I lay down the blade on the piece of Ava foam, and cutting into that with an X-Acto knife on each side, making a slit inside of the Ava foam itself, which would create a hole for the blade to sit snugly in, but can raise and lower at a decent speed, but not fall out on its own. Then I will put a dial rod through the center of the Ava foam, and it will also go through the center of the foam board. You will then grind down the excess dial rod that sticks out as shown in the picture before until it merges with the Ava foam. To make the very end tip of the cane itself, I had taken a piece of PVC, sanded it down, and then created a line just a little bit below that one, and that will be the decoration that is below, because one seems to be more elevated than the other. So I'm going to cut that there and then glue that on to the end of right there. As for the designs down in the bottom, I'm going to do very similar designs to what I've done on the top part, right up here. They're going to look like vines, and you can kind of do your own thing because I don't really have a straight up picture like seen right in here. They are my own design, and you can make it simple, you can make it complex, whatever you want. If you're sick of drawing lines, make it simple. If you want a challenge, go make it complex. To create the design that happens before the edge of the handle and the sheath on the other side of the cane itself, create a bevel on both sides that match up and we'll create almost like a space in between each of them because the points will be touching, but the bevels are opposite of each other. So this one will go down and the other bevel will face upwards. To start making the blade itself, I'm going to use foam board, which you can buy at like Kmart or Walmart, or I use science poster board, math, but whatever science project poster boards. But this one is going to be about 20 inches long, as seen in there, 20 inches. And I'm going to do 2 layers so it's thick enough and it will not bend whenever I take it in and out of the sheath. To make the tips of the swords, just cut at an angle, like a triangle, off of the tips of the foam board, and then what you're going to do is need to glue them together. Don't do what I did, and whenever you were sanding away, you were wondering why it wasn't getting any thinner and why it wasn't fitting, but then I realized taking away the edges and making it look sharper takes away thickness, and it slides in really easily. So now, at this point, it slides out really easily as well, and it has no friction to keep it in. So if you fall into this problem, I have figured out a solution. If you would angle it like this, or not like this, no, that's too close, but if you would angle it like this, just a tad, and you raise it, it doesn't fall. So you hardly notice that it's turned, and it won't fall, and you can still take it out just as much as you want, but that's only if that happens. But just remember, don't sand away too much. You could always come back and sand more later. So I would pretty much recommend doing the edges first, actually. To make the design that goes along the sides of the cane, the little rings, take some craft foam and make them about 1/4 of an inch all the way down. Make them obviously bigger than the PVC itself, because you always want to be safer than sorry. So just along those lines that you would have drawn before, that's where they would go. So you make 2 of those and then you glue them on. And this is what it would look like before you glue it. Once you have these 2 rings glued on, it is now time to paint this cane. So what you're going to do is tape everything that doesn't need to be taped. I would recommend not using Scotch tape. Just from a personal experience, it kind of ruined the paint. Just use painter's tape. I would highly recommend that. So you're going to separate the cane from the sword. You're going to either tape the rings first and paint it black, or tape everything else, paint the rings, and then come back, tape the rings, and then paint it black. Whatever decision you choose, just tape them smart, tape them nice and easy. Take your time with it, and don't waste too much tape. For the scythe at the bottom, you're going to want to pull the scythe out to paint it silver, and then like that, and then tape around the base of the scythe, just all around it, and then paint it. When you come back to spray paint the blade, be sure to tape at least half of the handle, so then you can angle it and not get any of the silver spray paint on the handle of the gold. Once all the painting is done and the touch-ups have been completed, then you have your finished sword cane. Thanks guys for watching. This was actually a lot of fun to make. I learned a lot from this tutorial, and I will see you in the next tutorial video.